WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. It says so right on my shirt. I swear I gotta mix it up. It's the nighttime view here. It's these long late mornings with Luke Jones and dude, we do this thing together on Mondays and Sunday nights, and we get together out of football season and into March Madness and into who are the Terps hiring and that guy and the Deshaun Watson thing. I tell you what, sports feels like a long way from where it was 2 years ago this week, right? Like when everything sort of broke down a little bit, we're really getting into some sort of natural rotation again with opening day coming a couple of weeks from now, right?
No question about it. And even on Sunday afternoon, the Orioles-Red Sox game was the free MLB TV game of the day, or one of the free games anyway. And it took me downloading the app on my phone and on my Roku, and I was able to watch a little bit of Orioles baseball. Not a whole lot, with plenty of March Madness on Sunday, but to your point, lots going on. I mean, there really is plenty on the national level in terms of, you just mentioned Deshaun Watson, and I'm sure we'll talk about that and the implications of what that means for the league, and certainly the distasteful elements of it, but also the elements of what it means for the Ravens and the rest of the AFC North. But you have that, you have March Madness, you have Kevin Willard to Maryland, and all the buzz and speculation leading up to an anticipated announcement there. Ravens free agency, Bradley Bozeman signs a 1-year deal and for not very much money at all, and it kind of leaves you some questions there as far as were the Ravens out on him? Was he out on the Ravens? Lots going on. So you're right. I mean,
I can confirm the Ravens were out on him, because if the Ravens were in on him, he'd still be here. Like, you want to take that one on to start the whole thing. By the way, Maryland Crab Cake Tour is coming to Fadley's on Wednesday. I'm looking forward to that. Dan Roderick's catching up with us. Brian Frosch, who I've never met. And, man, you roll the crab cakes out from Fadley's, Luke, people come. I promise, man. I had a Costas crab cake. Did you see that platter the other day we did over there?
I did.
You were invited. I don't know what else to say, dude. You're always invited.
In fairness, it is the first week of free agency where I could be sending a WNST text alert at any time. So, for me to be on the road for that long, it's kind of a stressful time. Waiting for Ravens to sign someone, Ravens leave someone.
We went to El Guapo. I went to El Guapo, and I had wanted to get Alan on the week before, and it didn't happen. And then, I just wanted to get Alan on to talk about baseball, because he hasn't been on in a couple months. Right. And he's busy. He runs a Kennedy set. He's a serious – Alan McCallum is a serious cat in the real world,
Sure.
And but he has afternoons free, and sometimes, and we can – so he says, I'm coming out. I'm like, oh, man, this is great. Don's going to be out. They're going to bitch about baseball. And blah, blah, blah. He walks in. He's masked up because of the work he does and off the field issues, and never eats cheese, by the way. So it's kind of weird being around queso with him in that sort of like a pizza joint with Alan. It's weird. So he comes in, and when he literally walks in the door, there's a lockout, and by the time we recorded, it was celebratory in that I don't know what they agreed to, but they agreed to something, and they're going to play baseball. So things really happen fast, right? Like, and I guess the Baker Mayfield, Deshaun Watson thing, and we'll get to that. But to your point, if I was doing sports on Friday at Costas, by Monday, the whole story changes on a lot of these things, including Zadarius Smith, right? I mean, that feels like a month ago. That's how fast this news cycle is, that dude agreed to a deal to come here, then didn't agree to a deal, and now has no deal. So, and the Bradley Bozeman, all of this, but Bozeman and the Ravens and the center position, I think it speaks volumes to the fact that whatever it was about Bradley Bozeman, they just were, nah. I mean, it's one thing on Ryan Jensen or on Wagner or on Kelechi Osemele to say, dude, it's $65 million. We're out on that. We're out on that. And the first time was Zadarius or anybody else. They were out on C.J. Mosley, right? Like, they love C.J. Mosley a lot. They didn't think they were going to lose him, but they did. This is a weird week all the way around, and I think for the Ravens, we sit here and try to read tea leaves and wonder what's on Eric DeCosta's mind and wonder who they're drafting and wonder who they like. And I've always said that on draft day. You want to know who Ozzie likes? I'll let you know around 3 in the afternoon on the third Saturday of April, and it's very clear who they value once the rubber meets the road. You know, how much they value John Harbaugh, how much they didn't value Bradley Bozeman.
Well, and I think with Bradley Bozeman, I mean, it's no secret that extension talks hadn't gone anywhere. You know, we had talked about that at a couple different points over the course of really, I mean, maybe not last off season, but during the season. And I think it's interesting now to look back at it in the sense of, remember, they gave Patrick McCary a 3-year extension, you know, right around $5 million per year, which is not lucrative money in this day and age. I mean, that's good money even for a top flight sixth lineman in the case of McCary, who can play anywhere. But you do wonder if it was a case of not getting anywhere with Bozeman and then they pivot to McCary, and not necessarily that he's definitely going to be their starting center, but he started 13 games there in 2019 and 2020.
I'll say this, at any price, it's the same thing. They drafted Ben Grubbs and gave the money to Yanda, right? They drafted Ed Dixon and gave the money to Pitta. They drafted Hayden Hurst, who's now, you know, running around recruiting Bengals apparently. And I would say that, you know, they move in the ways that they see out in Owings Mills, and for whatever reason, it's very clear they didn't want him on their offensive line right now. They're passing him at any price, I would say, right?
Well, I think now that's evident. Yes. Was that going to be the case in December or January? Probably not. I think they would have had him back at that point in time, but it always changes. You know, market prices change in the same way that you might have a number for a guy when on the first day of free agency, and then you realize, you know, you kind of sit back and that guy doesn't have nearly as much interest. And suddenly you say, okay, well, we're not going to offer this guy $7 million per year because there's no other bidders. So maybe we're going to offer him 4. Maybe we're going to offer him 3. So, you know, it's always a moving target. You know, how you value a player in December can change until January to March to April to during training camp. I mean, we've seen that happen with different players before. So, you know, I think what's interesting, though, is you do look at the price that was reported, which was $2.8 million. I mean, it's nothing. So I will say this, if the Ravens have issues at center, they're going to be second guessed big time this year. And it's going to be a case of, you know, you let Bradley Bozeman go out the door for nothing and he goes to Carolina on a 1-year deal. And, you know, well, if it's Patrick McCary or Tristan Colon or someone you draft, or you do make a big play for JC Treader, although I'm certainly not anticipating that at this point. I think what's interesting, though, Nestor, moving beyond Bozeman and just looking at the center position in general, because you know me, I'm always kind of looking for patterns. I'm always looking for different elements that fit into what we would consider football analytics. But, you know, you look at a lot of different studies. I know PFF, Pro Football Focus, did one last spring, I think it was, and it kind of looked at wins above replacement, at least their metric. That's similar to baseball, but it's for football. And it's not gospel, but it's what they use. And they were kind of ranking the positions by value. Of course, at the top of the list is what? Quarterback. But one of the positions that was near the bottom was center. So you start to look back at where the Ravens were a decade ago. They had Matt Burke. Matt Burke retires after they win Super Bowl 47. Think about where they've been since then. Gino Gradkowski, starter in 2013, 4th-round pick. They acquired Jeremy Zuda, I think, for a 5th-round pick. And Zuda made okay money, nothing special, but he wasn't league minimum either. So he was their center for 3 years. You know, he was okay. You know, he was good in 2014, hurt in 2015, and in 2016. Ryan Jensen, former 6th-round pick, starts in 2017, has a great year. Ravens let him go. You know, by all accounts, didn't make any serious effort to re-sign him because they knew he was going to get big money. Matt Skura, former undrafted free agent. Bradley Bozeman, 6th-round pick. Patrick McCary, undrafted free agent. Tristan Colon, who started 3 games over the last couple years at center, undrafted free agent. Are you sensing a pattern here? They're not investing in the center position. Now, to their credit, they have developed some centers here over the last several years. And you know, Matt Skura did a commendable job for a couple years. And really the knee injury is what led to his demise here in Baltimore. But
if they had Ryan Jensen over the last 3 years, they'd have been a better football team. The way he's played and won, and Tom Brady. But I don't know that they ever had an appetite to give him $11 million a year, right?
Well,
Especially to your point, we drafted Ronnie Stanley. That's where the money's going to go, right? We drafted Orlando Brown thinking when they drafted him, he overshot what they believed he'd be, that he priced himself sort of out and wanted to be a left tackle and all that. But it really is a symphony. I mean, I remember Mike Flynn and Edwin Mulatalo and John Ogden preaching all that to me, 25 years ago, Jim Coletto, that it's all of that. It's so not talked about. Maybe John Madden talked about it a lot, right? Baldinger talks about it a lot because he was one of them. But when you get this wrong, and to your point, after Matt Burke, they haven't had the best grown up in the room there. And when they developed that guy, they just said, we have another priority. Everybody can't be top of class. You can't have the highest paid safety and the highest paid corner and the highest paid quarterback. And, you just can't keep these guys. And the better you draft, and Eric's pretty good at this and they've kept their job a long time, the more of these disappearing story there are, including this one. Eric is staking his reputation and saying, no, we don't want him. We're going to do better. And I would think in the draft, they must have identified – they have a solution for this, dude. I don't think they're going to go into this naked. I mean, if they do at $2.8 million, it really does smell funny.
Well, and that's the big key. And I would actually push back a little bit and say we'll see, because you can't keep talking about how important your offensive line is and then you let your second best offensive lineman walk out the door from a year ago. Now, you're hoping Ronnie Stanley's back and healthy. You've added Morgan Moses, who certainly upgrades you at right tackle, someone who has been very durable. Durability, clearly an issue for this team last year across the board, let alone just talking about the offensive line. So at the same time, I was even talking with someone else about this over the weekend. You look at where the Ravens were in 2019. They had tremendous offensive line, arguably the best offensive line in football. It's a big reason why they were 14-2 and ran for over 3,000 yards. And your quarterback was a unanimous MVP. All those factors at work. But it's tough to look at 2019 and now fast forward 3 years later. Are the Ravens better or necessarily as good at any of those positions? You had an all-pro Ronnie Stanley at left tackle, and now it's an injured question mark Ronnie Stanley. Again, not blaming the Ravens, but just looking at the reality of the circumstances.
Well, you don't have a solution there. That's your point. Yeah.
Well, your solution is you need Ronnie Stanley to be healthy, but the point is you don't know that right now. Left guard, you had Bradley Bozeman there 3 years ago. Fast forward, Ben Cleveland or Tyree Phillips. Now, either one of those guys could emerge and be as good as what Bozeman was at left guard. But again, a question mark. Center, Matt Skura to question mark. I don't know who that's going to be. Right guard, Marshall Yanda. Again, he retired. I'm not blaming the Ravens here, but I'm just looking at each spot individually. Kevin Zeitler's good. He's not Marshall Yanda. And again, kudos to them for getting that right after that was a problem for them in 2020. Right tackle, Orlando Brown to Morgan Moses. That's a drop off. So, and again, I like that move. Let's be clear. I'm not criticizing the move. I'm looking at it in its totality. And when you're talking about how important your offensive line is, and everyone's saying you need to build a fortress around Lamar Jackson and you need to have an elite offensive line, when you let Bradley Bozeman leave for under $3 million on a 1-year deal, you're going to be second guessed if that offensive line continues to have issues. Now, that said, do I think Patrick McCary or Tristan Colon, could they potentially do the job? And I want to be very clear, and this is something I said over and over and over. I think a lot of people and a lot of the angst with Ravens fans right now, Bradley Bozeman wasn't an all-pro center. He did a good job this year. Let's be clear about that. I think he did a good job. I'd comfortably say he was above average. Do I think he was a top 3 center? And you heard the reports of some people saying he was going to get 8 figures per year. Well, clearly that didn't happen. And clearly no one had that kind of interest in him, or he would have gotten a multi-year deal for $10 million per.
Yeah, he's no secret. He went to Alabama. He was scouted. You know what I mean?
Sure. So again, looking at all of that information in its totality, I kind of look at this as, all right, we'll see. I can't necessarily sign off on the idea of saying, well, we're just going to draft a center and he's going to be as good, because that hasn't worked out so well at left guard. If you think about it, I mean, think over the last 3-4 years, They've drafted Ben Powers. They've drafted Tyree Phillips. They've drafted Ben Bredesen, who's since been traded because he didn't work out. And they've
Rhymes
drafted
with
Ben.
jettison.
Yeah, right. And they've drafted Ben Cleveland. Now, do I still think Ben Cleveland or Tyree Phillips can do the job at left guard? Yeah, they need to. You draft that many guys in the third and fourth round to kind of be that left guard for you. One of them better work out, or you've wasted a lot of picks.
On the day they drafted these guys, they're thinking, "Oh my God, this is going to be this is
our
going
starter.
to be the Legion of Doom in front of Lamar Jackson," right? I mean, that's what you set out to do when number 8's your quarterback. And it speaks to me about the relationship there between Bozeman and Jackson, and who's going to be the center, who's going to be the leader, because to your point, and mine as well across the league, look at who wins championships and look at who snaps them the ball. And it's always a grown-up snapping them the ball, because that guy's identifying the Mike linebacker. That guy's the guy point of snap for everybody to make the trains run on time. And if that guy's not exactly what you want, you wind up with, no offense to Gino Gradkowski or Jeremy Zuda or any of these guys, you wind up with a stopgap instead of something that I think the Ravens want to find a solution at that spot. And I don't think they thought Bradley Bozeman was the solution, and neither did anybody else in the league if all they're going to give him is $3 million.
Yeah, I mean, I would disagree a little bit that they're necessarily looking for a long-term solution, because that hasn't how the last decade's played out. They haven't paid anyone. They haven't drafted a center very early in the draft.
I think if you want to do the things you want to do with Lamar, well, they'd be best served to find a 4-year center here. Literally, they would be best served to find.
Well, then they need to go. If that's the case, then they need to go sign J.C. Tretter then, because if you're looking to draft someone and start a rookie, I mean, maybe Tyler Linderbaum, but a lot of people think he's more of a better fit in a zone blocking scheme rather than gap, which is primarily what they do. So I hear what you're saying, but I think at some point you need to, when someone shows you who they are, you need to believe them. I don't think the Ravens value the center position. I just don't, because they haven't proceeded in the last decade as that's an important position for them, because they've been using undrafted rookies and late round draft picks. And even when a late round draft pick like Ryan Jensen becomes a dominant center, you let him go. So, and to be very clear, I'm not even saying that as a major criticism. I'm saying that as just looking at what positions they value. To your point, you can't pay everyone top of market. So you might need to prioritize the positions on your offensive line, or you have to prioritize cornerbacks rather than middle linebackers. Or maybe a better example is paying corners and safeties rather than edge rushers. So, and we've kind of seen that play out on the defensive side of the ball here in recent years, where they've pumped a lot of money into the secondary. That's an analytics-minded kind of philosophy there, whereas we've seen them let Matt Judon go, and they've let Yannick Ngakoue go. So, we'll just have to see how it plays out. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they do bring in J.C. Tretter, but based on how they've proceeded, I'm guessing there's a good chance it's going to be Patrick McCary and Tristan Colon duking it out, and maybe a developmental center. Maybe that's a little more so than drafting the guy that you think is going to be the guy week 1 come this fall.
I know you want to talk St. Peter's. I know you want to talk March Madness, Kentucky out, and Coach K, and like all of that stuff, and the new Maryland coach. All that, we'll get to all of that. Luke Jones is here. We're having a good day and a good week here. I hope everybody's enjoying the Maryland Crab Cake Tours. We get it out, presented by the Maryland Lottery. Also, the Wise Conversations all week long. Dan Rogers is going to be dropping by Fadley's on Wednesday. I've sort of handpicked some guests I've been waiting for after the Super Bowl. I'm hitting all of them this week, so stick around. We are going to be discussing Deshaun Watson. I'm going down to Houston, out to Cleveland, get a little reaction on all of that as well, and talk some of our pals about just a crazy news week here all the way around. I'm Nestor. He's Luke. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore positive.